Now, it's a well-known fact that I have been left a little bit disappointed by the Nike trail running department when it comes to the performance of their trail running shoes in British conditions, especially when it is wet and muddy. So when I purchased a pair of the new Nike Pegasus Trail 4s, if I'm honest, I wasn't expecting a lot, but out on that first outing, I actually thought it performed pretty well and I really enjoyed that run. However, it was on very dry wooded trails and we didn't encounter any mud to test out the level of grip and traction from that outsole. Since then, I put a good 50 miles in the shoe and we have managed to run it in some wet conditions. So let's dive into the video and find out how the new Nike Pegasus Trail 4 has performed. Welcome back, folks. I'm Lloyd Purvis and you are watching Run4Adventure. Hope everybody is fit and well out there in YouTube world and you're managing to get in some quality training. If it is your first time watching the channel, well, thanks for watching. It's really appreciated. What we normally do when we do a full in-depth review at the channel is we'll give you a few facts and figures about the shoes that we've been testing. We'll break down the construction in a bit more detail, and then we'll obviously talk all about how it's performed over the miles that we've run in it. And then we'll wrap things up with our scoring system and a quick conclusion. So let's dive in and let's give you guys a few facts and figures on Nike's latest trail offering. The Pegasus Trail 4 now retails in the UK for a pretty reasonable £114.95. Weight-wise, it comes in at 285 grams in a men's UK 9.5 and it runs off a 9mm heel offset. We've got a 3 to 4mm lug depth on that outsole and it is available in 2 colorways for men and 3 color options for women. When it comes down to the fit, I would say it's true to size with average width in that toe box, but it is quite shallow in volume. As far as the construction goes, the new shoe has pretty much been redesigned from the ground up. So we've got new upper, new midsole and a new outsole design when you compare it to the previous version, the Pegasus Trail 3. So the new upper now has been constructed using a lightweight engineered mesh, but we've got these additions of lots of tiny perforations around the toe box at the midfoot and in the tongue on that upper. That's to help with airflow to keep those feet nice and cool, or as cool as they can be while you've got a pair of socks on in a shoe and you're running. Following on from the Pegasus 39 road shoe, Nike have reintroduced the Flywire system into the trail version as well. So you can see these little orange wires poking through actually work through down to the midsole internally in that upper. And then combined with that gusseted tongue that's integrated into the shoe, that's all been designed to make you feel well held and well locked down at the midfoot, giving you a nice level of stability even if you're running on uneven and technical trails. Finishing up, we've got some good structural overlays working from the back of the shoe around those lace eyelets for a bit of extra durability. Good levels of padding and structure around the ankle and in the heel. And then we've got the handy little addition of this pull tab just to make it a bit easier to get in and out of the shoe. Moving down to the midsole, and you've got a full length Nike React compound midsole. Now, I've been a big fan of this compound over the years, especially when running on hard compact trails or section of tarmac, but I have found it to be quite unstable sometimes on uneven ground, depending on how soft the blend is and how high the stack is. Where this midsole design differs from previous versions is you are now sunk down into that compound. So you've got this sort of slight guide rail wrapping around your foot. I think that's been a really good move by Nike because out on that first run, I definitely felt a lot more planted and a lot more stable when I was running on uneven trails. And finally, moving down to the all-important outsole, and if you've ever run in a Nike trail running shoe before, you'll know that this is the section that they tend to struggle with, and you can be left pretty disappointed, especially in wet conditions. So we pretty much got a full-blown rubber outsole, just with the odd flex groove and this little bit of exposed compound on the heel there. We've got a mixture of 3 to 4mm lugs in a multi-directional pattern to give you good levels of grip and traction on the trails, but to also offer a nice smooth ride when you hit any sections of tarmac. There you have it, a bit of info about the specs and the construction of the new Pegasus Trail, but let's get stuck into how it's performed over the last month or so, and we're going to start with the upper first. Now, in the past, I have had a few issues with the fit when it comes to the Pegasus Trail and it being quite sloppy on my foot shape. Now I know that's super personal and I haven't got the widest foot in the world, but definitely in the Pegasus 2, I did feel a lot of slippage in that upper and I found it really hard to sort of get a good fit and a good lockdown around my midfoot, and that definitely led to sort of stability issues on uneven ground, which was a real shame because the shoe is actually really comfortable to run in. As soon as I put my feet in these, I could feel a big difference and it definitely works better now for my foot shape. I think having that midfoot band from the gusseted tongue and Nike reintroducing that flywire tech, I just feel a lot more hold at my midfoot, a lot more lockdown. So I've had no sort of lateral or medial slippage in the shoe at all. And that's just really helped when it comes to feeling stable when you're running on uneven ground. I just feel so much more connected to the shoe when I compare it to the previous 3 Nike trail shoes that I've run in. For me, just the right level of padding around that ankle collar in the heel and in the tongue. So it feels nice and comfortable, but it still allows me to get that good lockdown. All those perforations worked into the new upper construction around the toe box, in the midfoot and the tongue have seemed to work pretty well when it comes to airflow. I've had no issues with my feet getting too hot inside the upper, and I have run the shoe in some pretty hot conditions lately. So all in all, really happy with the performance of the upper. One thing I would say when it comes down to fit is that there's not a lot of volume in that toe box, and I wouldn't say it's the widest fitting shoe in the world. I've had no issues with it at all and it's worked well for my foot shape. But if you got on with the sort of roomy toe box feel that the Pegasus 2 and Pegasus 3 gave you, then you might be a bit disappointed with the changes to the fit. And then lastly, I've just got to mention, I don't know why brands do this. This is a trail running shoe and the toe box is super soft fabric. There's no form of protection there at all. So if you are out on the trails and you just so happen to kick something when you're running, you're definitely going to damage something, unfortunately. And it would have been nice to have the addition of a toe bumper. As far as the performance of the new midsole design goes, I think it's handled everything pretty well. Like all Nike trail running shoes, it's run really well on the hard stuff. So if you have to hit a bit of road on the way to the trails or on the way home, this will soak it up really well. But for me, the best addition is this slight guide rail around your foot now. The fact that Nike have sunk you down into that compound, it just feels so more connected, so much more planted. You feel so much more stable, especially when you compare it to the previous 2 unstable versions of this shoe. You used to be sat up high on a deep, very soft midsole, and it just didn't fill you with confidence when you were running on uneven ground because it just felt so unstable underfoot. I'm glad to say this isn't the case with the new Pegasus Trail, and I actually think this redesigned midsole on this shoe is one of the best midsoles I've run in when it comes to Nike trail running shoes. Moving down to the part of the review you guys have probably been waiting for, and it is the outsole, or should I say the infamous Nike outsole. Now out on that first run, we were in the middle of some really hot weather down here in Cornwall, so the trails were very dry and dusty in the woods. I tried my hardest to find some mud to test it out on, but there was none to be seen anywhere. And I did promise that we'd find some wetter, muddier conditions to test the shoe out in before we came back with our full review. I'm glad to say we did manage to do that, so the shoe has run through some mud and on some slippery wet rocks as well. So what was the outcome, I hear you all say? The first thing I need to mention is it did seem to offer me a lot more grip on wet rock this time round. And you know, this has been an area that when it comes to Nike's sort of rubber compound on the outsoles has always been pretty sketchy, and I've never had a lot of faith or confidence in the outsole. But the Pegasus Trail outsole actually handled it pretty good, and the further I ran in those conditions, actually the more confidence I gained, and I didn't have any slippage at all. I don't know whether Nike have changed that rubber compound at all, but it definitely seemed to perform better in those wet, rocky conditions. Unfortunately, the same can't be said when it comes to mud, and it's kind of what I was expecting when you look at the shallow lug depth. I thought it was going to struggle in those conditions. The forefoot wasn't too bad, but there was a couple of times when I was running down sort of a steep, wet, slippery, muddy descent, and you know, these reverse facing lugs on the heel just didn't give me any confidence at all. I just had to slow down and take it really carefully because I just felt like my feet were going to slip out under me. And you know, this is, if I'm honest, exactly what I thought the performance would be like in the mud when I looked at this lug layout. So in muddy conditions, I have been left a bit disappointed. The only other thing I forgot to mention when it comes to running the Pegasus Trail in wet conditions was the other day I ran Polzef 10K, part of the brilliant summer sessions from Freedom Racing. I rocked up in the Pegasus Trail 4s. We headed out at the start across the beach, heading for the headland, and this kind of freak wave came up as the tide was coming in and literally soaked all the front runners, and we were running in like shin deep water. Obviously my shoes got soaking wet, and as I sort of headed off to the coast path, they were squelching, and I just thought, well, I'll keep running, it's going to expel that water over time. I'm sad to say my left shoe was still squelching when I crossed the finish line of a 10K, which is pretty unbelievable. So when it comes to water drainage, these are pretty bad. So there you have it, the highs and lows of running in Nike's new Pegasus Trail 4. But we've reached that point of the review when we need to get some points on the Run4Adventure board. So we're going to start scoring, and we're going to start with price first. So with the new Pegasus Trail retail in the UK for £115, I actually think that's a pretty fair price for this shoe, especially when you compare it to the shoes that it's competing against, and you just look at how shoe prices are going a bit bonkers at the moment. So we're going to score it when it comes to price a pretty reasonable 8 out of 10. Next to be scored is comfort and performance, and it's actually quite a hard thing to score when you look at the Pegasus Trail 4 because it's performed really well in certain conditions and then not so well in others. So we're going to do it a little bit differently this time round. So I'm actually going to give it a dry weather score and a wet weather score. So starting off with dry first, and it's actually handled those dry conditions really well. The upper, very comfortable. I've had no hot spots, no blisters, no irritation. It's nice and airy with all those perforations for ventilation. I've felt way more locked in and held around that midfoot compared to previous versions, and I think that flywire technology has had a lot to do with that. Midsole performance, like I said, one of the best performing React Nike trail running shoe midsoles I've had. Really good levels of comfort, very comfortable on the more compact trails, really good at crossing over to a bit of road and a bit of trail if you have to do that in your running. And then that outsole performance, again, on dry trails has been really good. I ran on some rooted sections, on some loose trails, and it handled and soaked all of that up really well. So when it comes to the dry weather score for the Pegasus Trail 4, I'm going to give it a pretty solid 8 out of 10. Now on to the wet score, and you can probably imagine this isn't going to be as flattering. So the fact that it ran like a couple of sponges on my feet at the Polzef 10K, and you know, it really has to be one of the worst draining trail shoes I've run in. And then I had that lack of traction from the heel of that outsole when I was running down those sort of steep, slippery, greasy descents. It really didn't fill me with confidence. So the wet score is going to be considerably lower than the dry score. I'm going to give it a slightly disappointing 4 out of 10. It's only getting a 4 out of 10 because I really do think that rubber and the grip on wet rock has been improved. I wouldn't say it's anywhere near as good as, say, a Powertrack from Saucony or a Viber Mega Grip, but definitely better than the previous two versions. So taking into consideration the dry score and the wet score, working at an average, I'm going to score the Pegasus Trail 4 a 6 out of 10 for comfort and performance. Last but definitely not least, the all-important topic of durability. And this is an area where Nike running shoes normally excel. They normally do really well, and this Pegasus Trail 4 is no exception. No early signs of fatigue on the upper, no stresses at that flex point. Looks like it's holding up really well to the miles. Looks like it's a really well constructed running shoe. The outsole, there's not a mark on it. I mean, it really looks completely untouched, and I've done a fair bit of road mileage crossing to and from the trails in the shoe, and it looks like I haven't even run a step in it. So pretty amazing when it comes to the outsole durability. So like I say, looks like a well-constructed shoe. I think it's going to hold up to the miles really well. So we're going to give it a solid 8 out of 10 for durability. So tallying up all those points here at Run4Adventure for the new Nike Pegasus Trail, it's going to score a pretty reasonable 22 out of 30. And I actually think that's probably the highest score we've ever given at the channel for a Nike trail shoe. When it comes down to the looks of the shoe, I think it looks okay. Okay, not the most exciting trail shoe I've ever seen, and it is quite a light colorway, so I think it's going to look a bit grubby and dirty quite quick. I'm sure Nike we'll bring out lots of bright, bold colorways of the new Pegasus Trail over the next few months. But when it comes to the launch color, it's not a thumbs up, it's not a thumbs down, it's kind of somewhere in the middle. As far as comparisons, I would say the closest comparison to the new Pegasus Trail is actually a shoe from Nike that they don't produce anymore, the Pegasus 36 Trail. It really is like they've kind of done a full circle and come back to that shoe, and this runs very, very similar. Shoes from other brands, I'd say Hoka's Torrent 2, even though that is a bit lighter, and maybe the Brooks Cascade would give you a very similar running experience. Right, so wrapping up with a quick conclusion, and I actually think the new Pegasus Trail 4 is a step in the right direction for Nike Trail. You know, that improvement on the fit and lockdown around my midfoot with that Flywire technology, having that much more stable, connected midsole that gives you a bit more confidence back, and then improving the grip on wet rock when it comes to the outsole rubber. Big improvements have definitely been made. So if you're looking for a trail shoe and you spend most of your time on less technical trails like sort of fire roads or towpaths, but you have to cross over to, you know, big sections of tarmac as you do it, then I think the new Pegasus Trail actually performs really well across those environments and does it very, very comfortably. However, if you're the sort of runner that likes to run all year round, you're getting out on technical trails, whether it's wet, muddy, super slippery, and you're looking for a trail shoe that's going to give you that grip and traction to fill you with confidence, then I would definitely look elsewhere, because I think there is trail running shoes on the market that handle those type of conditions a lot better. So that is a wrap on another full in-depth trail running shoe review here at Run4Adventure. Really hope you enjoyed it, guys. Really hope you found it helpful. It'd be great to get your feedback as well. So if you've been racking up the miles in these bad boys, then let us know how they've been performing in the comments below. Don't forget, if you have found this video useful, you know what to do. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, but don't forget to hit that bell icon so you'll be notified when we upload any new exciting running content. But for now, guys, thanks for watching, thanks for all your amazing support. We'll be back on the channel very soon, and as always, stay safe and keep on running. We'll give you a few facts and figures about the shoe that's what be fitting well out there in YouTube world, and you're managing to get in some quality training. If this is just